For less than an hour, yeah. And we put the rice also, it's in the basket in the morning, it's already. It's really very powerful. And I think get the parabolic shift. You have the rings at the correct distance.
Right.
And you just get the sections in. Yes, certainly.
A little bit about the
It's not exactly complicated. It is a little slower than if we had made this thing 4 inches larger, it would have been exactly equal to small burner. But that got to be so big.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Just fine. So you brew beer in a solar cooker?
That's correct. What I've done is I've taken the Kurkol solar box cooker and pretty much using the conventional beer making recipe. Instead of using a heating up and purifying my water on the stove, I just used the solar box cooker. So pretty much it takes a little extra time, but the result is very good.
So you actually do the brewing in a box cooker, not some fancy kind of high heat.
That's correct.
Parabolic cooker or something like that.
All the energy required to purify the water, to brew the beer, I'm getting from the sun in the box cooker.
And how long does the cooking process take?
It's pretty much takes up an afternoon. I allow for about 3 to 4 hours of purification time to kill any bacteria in the water, and then once my ingredients are added, I allow for another 2 to 3 hours of brew time. So it's pretty much a full day of solar cooking.
And I just had a sip of this beer. I thought it was really good. How long has that aged in the bottles?
That, believe it or not, that has only aged for about 2 weeks.
Really?
So I think it came out really well, and people seem to really enjoy it. One fellow tried to buy a six-pack from me, but of course I told him I couldn't accept any money, being that this is the whole purpose of this is for research and to further the cause of man, so to speak.
And make good beer in the process.
Exactly. Why not? I call it just straightforward, practical application.
And your name, please?
My name's Andrew Pijak.
Thank you. So your name is?
Paul Barth.
And let's get a shot of your cooker here, Paul.
All right. This is basically made out of cardboard, glass, and aluminum foil. It's insulated with newspaper. Very simple materials that can be found in the third world usually and be manufactured very inexpensively. But there's many thousands of these in use in the United States also.
So this is simply glass, cardboard, and newspaper.
Right, and aluminum foil has been glued to the cardboard.
And down in there are, what is that?
Some blueberry muffins that are cooking. And the temperature in there right now is about 220 degrees.
So that's hot enough to cook the muffins?
Right. It won't cook quite as fast as your oven, but it will cook them. It doesn't really matter because it's not using any energy, so it can take a little more time. The sun's energy is available to everybody. You just have to use it.
Is this available as a kit, this cooker here?
You can buy it as a kit, partially assembled. You can buy it completely assembled like this with the plastic film on top. And you can buy the plans for $5 from Solar Box Cookers and then build it yourself. If you're in the Sacramento Municipal Utility District's area for $5, well, you get the plan, but you also get a free cookbook from SMUD, which is a real nice cookbook.
The plans and a free cookbook for $5. What a deal.
Right.
And you said the kit for?
The kit is $40. The kit is like this. There's a kit over here. This is a cardboard one. It was white. It's this white cooker right here.
Oh, sure. Let me zoom in on that.
It's partially assembled. You finish it. And it's a very nice model, has a glass top. This one was made from... I'll let you turn around again. Well, he was going to torture you. This was made from the plan. This is one homemade model right here in front of us. You've zoomed in the first place. The third model over here was designed to be taken to the third world. It's made of cardboard, but it folds down into a box the size of the lid. And that's why this is 2 thin layers of polyester film, so they don't break. The polyester film is almost as efficient as glass as far as thermal insulation. And then when you put it on, take it on an airplane, you take it to Timbuktu, wherever you're going to take it, Afghanistan, you doesn't have the breakage problem of glass, doesn't weigh as much.
What else can a person cook in one of these cardboard box cookers? Can you cook?
Anything you cook, lasagna. You can make bread. I put out casseroles. I roast chickens, turkeys.
You roast a turkey?
Oh yeah, even I think people who cooked at Thanksgiving roast their turkey in them. So anything you cook in a stove with a lid on it, or anything you can cook in an oven, you put a lid on it. But it's really good for things that cook slow, take a lot of energy. Rice, beans, things like that, lentils, any kind of grains. Vegetables are really nice to cook in it because you don't have to use any moisture. So the vegetables cook evenly from all the way around. A lot more flavors cooked in. There's no moisture, take away the vitamins.
And they cook in their own moisture.
Their own moisture. Another nice thing is when you cook in one of these things, the pans have very little cleaning. When you cook something on a stove, the one surface gets hot, things stick to it. When you cook in here, these pans cook evenly all the way around, and things don't burn or stick to the pans. So it's a real advantage to this.
Sounds wonderful.
It is. And why heat your house up on a hot day cooking and turn your air conditioner on to cool it down when you can just use one of these and cook it to call your food? I use them a lot. I've been using them for 5 years. And I probably cook 2 to 3 days a week with it, and then I have leftovers to eat the rest of the week.
And you warm your leftovers probably in there too.
Sometimes I have to admit I stick them in the microwave, but most of the cooking's been done in this. And cats and dogs stay away from it. I said, well, my cat or my dog will get onto it. I just say, get up here once. They get their nose near the glass, their nose near the reflector. It's just like a fire. They stay away. They may smell kind of good if it's so hot and so glaring, but the cats and dogs run away from it real quick. I've used them in Yosemite. Raccoons stay away. I've cooked at 10,000 feet in the mountains. It's hot enough to keep the bears away. And they'll still cook in borderline conditions. They're not totally dependent on heat. They're dependent on sun angle. If it's a bright sunny day and it's 30 degrees out, they'll still cook. It won't cook quite as fast as it does today, but it'll still cook.
These are just very simple little solar cookers, basically made out of cardboard, aluminum foil, and a piece of glass. And I use them in the middle of winter in Mount Shasta, right through the winter. Beans, rice, squash, potatoes, breads. You can see here it's...
You cook rice in the winter?
Oh yeah, rice, beans, pinto beans are in the winter. The hardest thing to cook. I cook them right up in the middle of winter in Mount Shasta. So it's 30, 40 degrees out and I'm boiling away in here.
So show us this cooker, please.
And this is how you get into it. You can see it boiling away in there. Can you catch that, the bubbling?
Let me move in on that. Yeah.
And you can see it's just a few layers of cardboard boxes.
Is that one layer of glass there?
Just one layer of glass. And then these fold up like this. Now I can have like 3 jars in there boiling away, and I can close it up like this and it'll stay hot till like 10 o'clock at night.
And this is just cardboard with aluminum foil?
Cardboard, regular glass, kids' finger paint for black. And I cook in jars. I cook in jars that look like this. Little light strip, black. Put rice in there, set it to the side, and cook them up.
And the walls don't appear to be very thick. There's not a whole lot of insulation in there?
About an inch of cardboard you want at least.
So it's several layers of cardboard.
Yeah. And you can make these small. You can, if you're just like a couple older people, you can have one that has about 8 or 9 inch square window, and you'll have little tiny panels, and it'll cook fine for a couple older people in the RV, and that makes it a little tiny unit, and it works. They're just different sizes. You add a little size, you get a little more power. You shrink it down a little less power, but sometimes you don't need all that power. So you can go for smaller ones too, which are the fun. Same thermodynamics, bigger or smaller. But then they get to a certain size, and I'd rather have 2 of them for my family, just so I could be cooking different kind of things at different times. But they'll cook pizzas, bread, squash, beans, rice right in the middle of winter, and they're a lot of fun. Any sunny day of the year they work.
Well, the one that I made for myself weighs at least 75 pounds. You said this weighs how much?
Probably 3 pounds, 4 pounds. So it makes it very easy to move around if you have to run around for shade. You know, if you have a shadow in an area, you can just move these around to another area. That's one of the real nice parts about using this medium. But then what I do is, how do I make these weatherproof, is that I pack them up when I'm done with my food. I do this, and now I carry this into the house. And whenever I'm hungry, I bring it out of there and it's hot, ready to go on the table. Now it's in the house, protected. I have them I have one going on 4 years old. It's the one I use all the time. And it's still working for me just fine. But, you know, through little effort, I've kept it alive just by taking care of it.
Did you varnish the cardboard or anything like that? No,
regular cardboard. No, when you're done with these, when you're totally done with them, they could all be back and recycled. It all comes from the dumpsters, recycling places. And when you're done with it after 3 or 4 years, you just throw it back in the recycling bins. So it's really using up nothing.
Basic, simple, and totally effective.
Works.
It's wonderful.
It is wonderful.
Thank you. What is your name, please?
My name's Joe Rattlebaugh.
And you're from?
Mount Shasta. This is a book I put out, Home Power put out for me. Catch that? Here's a little booklet I put out.
Hold it still for me, please.
This is my winter camp where I live in the winter. And here's a little one-page plan I put out, and I've been giving out for years to people how to build them.
So tell us about this device.
Well, this is a one-burner cooker. It's a collector-type stove. So it would replace one of your burners on your home kitchen stove. And it was primarily designed for the third world countries of the world because the use of combustible materials is very readily being taken from the face of the earth. So we thought if we could use the sun as a free means of cooking, it would be well worth the design and well worth the effort and time to put it together.
So what's the material there? We got a pot in the center.
Yes.
And that water's boiling, see?
This water, as you can see in there now, is boiling. And this is a 48-inch Fresnel lens as a collector. It has 5 concentric rings that are all designed to come to a focus right here at 30 inches under from the base of the lens. And this, as a concentrator then, develops enough heat to boil a quart of water in about 13 minutes.
To boil a quart of water in 13 minutes?
We can boil a quart of water in 13 minutes. So if you can boil a quart of water, you can cook anything. And primarily rice, which would be for third world countries.
So really you could cook rice in an hour and a half up there. You could cook a substantial quantity of rice.
Oh, by all means. As a matter of fact, I would know the ratio of a bag of rice to, I know in the Philippines, the way they determine how much water to put in the over the rice, they just put the water in there, let it come, put the rice in, and then put the water in until it hits the first knuckle of their forefinger over the rice, and they say that's enough. And they let it boil, and then as soon as it's boiled down, it's finished. So that's why I say if you can boil a quart of water, you can cook just about anything. You can make stews, you can fry in it. This is one of the reasons we put their fry pan in here, because most cookers of this type won't allow you to fry. It doesn't generate enough heat. So you can fry bacon or you can fry anything. So if you wanted to set the thing up in your patio, used here in the States, you could, if you know exactly where the sun's coming up in the morning, you could make your coffee and set it on there. By the time the sun comes up and you get up, your coffee's hot.
Are you, what's your training? Are you an engineer by training?
No, my partner is an engineer, John Long. He's, my name's Bob Ware, and he's John Long, he's from Sarasota, Florida. And John is an engineer of some renown. He was with the radiation lab in Livermore for several years, and so he was the fellow that designed the lens. He made the lens, and I made the rest of it. So between the two of us, why, we think we've come up with an idea that's certainly going to save a tremendous amount of combustible fuels for third world countries, and hopefully we've contributed something.
A lot easier to a lot
Something you wanted to meet me.
Screen and shading things up. This particular pump right here is good up to 200 feet, 225 feet. From 200 feet is putting out about 3/4 of a gallon a minute. And typically over in this area, you're looking at an average of, let's say, 6 hours a day. And throughout the year, down to 3 in December, and you're up to 8.5 in the August-September range. But typically, it's way more than enough to provide domestic water for a household, and also small raised garden beds, things like that. Ideal for running drip systems, for pressure systems. They're great.
So with no pressure, you can pump 200 feet up?
Yeah. Wow. And at sea level, you can break 100 pounds. It's over 100 psi at sea level. So it's they're very practical for the people that don't have utilities, that are out in the suburban areas that just don't have power utility lines available, that have needs for domestic water and not too much more than that. They're real practical. It's a water pump, a submersible well pump, to go ahead and provide domestic water, to pump that water from the ground and provide it to the families, to whatever, gardens, what have you. So it's we're here to kind of take care of the solar electric end of it. Solar electric and solar cooking, it all comes into, we can utilize what we have there with sunshine and take care of a lot of our needs.
How much does this whole rig cost?
Complete pumping system like this, there's, with the control box, you're looking at right around $1,500 for the complete system, with the solar modules, the submersible well pump, and mounting and whatnot. But like I said, it's much more practical when you're in a situation where the families don't have utilities. They are faced with getting their water out of the ground, providing power to run the lights, to run whatever within the household, as well as washing machines and what have you. Over here we have other equipment that we utilize for taking care of home power.
So does this in itself will not produce 110 AC?
No, you would have to go through an inverter, take that DC and go ahead and step it up to regular 120 volt wall power. And we run microwaves. We can solar cook with the microwave.
You were handing out pizza a little while ago.
Yeah,
cooked in that microwave.
It's a lot quicker. It's a lot quicker than my solar oven. Uses a lot more power than my solar oven uses too.
What sort of solar oven do you use?
I've got a Burns. It's a fabricated in Milwaukee oven.
Well, that's the round blue oven.
No, it's this one right here. It's a glass box.
Oh,
And
let's have a look at that.
It's I really like it because it's very portable. It folds up very easily. It's real nice to take to shows. And that's that with the handle. I don't want to pick it up because I don't want the food to be spilled all over the inside. But it's also on a gimbal table inside, so it will go ahead as you step this up. You can angle in the back. There's a telescopic rod in the back which will help you change your angles. And typically It'll cook anywhere from, you know, what you want to set it. You can go up to, say, 350 realistically. I have seen times when it's up in the 380 range, but that's middle of summer when it's 110 degrees outside. Anyway, you wouldn't even have to put the reflectors up. It could probably be 225. Mm-hmm. But with the reflectors in the high summer, I've seen 380 in it. Typically, it's in the 325 to 350 range.
So this is a much more sophisticated version of the little cardboard box cooker.
It's basically a commercial.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's just a commercial version that is available. That's one complaint that we heard a lot about was, you know, the solar ovens, they all work great. The problem is when you get into weather conditions or anything like that, it can be, you can have problems when it gets wet. So my wife in particular complained about that because we had to redo a solar oven because it was outside. And I decided to take these on. I really like them. It's a very portable unit, a very portable, practical unit.
So you use this for yourself all the time?
I use this all the time for myself. Mostly beans, casseroles, breads, things like that. We're going to put a gingerbread here in a few minutes. So the hot dogs weren't my idea, but that's...
And your name is?
Don Luthringer. I have a company, Energy Specialist. I deal mostly with solar electric systems, alternative energy power, small hydros.
Can I buy this?
I only take one. I only take this.
Yes, I know. At the end of the country.
That is a great device.
How many minutes will water boil?
I've got a question about the shape. Is that a portion of a sphere or a parabola? Parabola? Parabolic. Yeah.
You're one second. 1 second.
Great job burning paper.
You use this to light your paper to start your fire.
Black?
Oh, black.
Black.
There is no chance that you can get hurt by this. People have to be careful not to put
Take off. Just like that.
Yes.
Okay, so we're here talking with Bob Metcalf. Bob, you are president of Solar Box Cookers International?
That's right, and I've been a solar cook myself for the last 14 years. It's just a superior way to cook and bake at this time of the year. I've also had the opportunity to hold workshops in 14 developing countries and show people how, using sunshine, you can put simple materials together and build a box and cook with the sun. That there is a serious alternative to fire.
Why developing countries? What's the particular attraction there of solar cooking?
Many countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America, when you talk about energy needs, you're talking about fuel for cooking. Quite often, 90% of the energy used in a country is fuel for cooking. And for many people, it's not automobile fuel, but it's what are they going to cook their food with. That is getting more and more difficult to get that fuel as deforestation is taking its toll. And if you do an energy survey in those countries, the only energy source they've got in abundance is sunshine. They got to learn how to use it. The good news is that this simple box can show you how to use the sunshine for serious cooking and water heating.
Let's have a look at the box here. Tell us what we're looking at.
What you're looking at are essentially just two boxes. There's an outer box and there's an inner box.
Let's have a look inside here.
Okay, and inside these two boxes, we've got aluminum foil as reflective material. It reflects light here. It also will reflect heat. And so the aluminum foil is going to be on both sides of the inner box and on the inside of the outer box. In the bottom, we have a dark tray, and we're going to be cooking with dark lids because the sun is going to go through a glass window. The visible light's going to go through the glass window. It's going to be absorbed and converted to heat by dark covered pots or by the dark tray in the bottom.
So that's one single layer of glass?
One single layer of glass, window strength glass, and then the heat that is produced there stays inside. It's like a greenhouse effect, very much like what we observe when you get into an automobile sitting out in the sun. But this is a better insulated box. Put 15 pounds of food in this in the morning, go off to work, let it cook all day, you come home, and your food is cooked. Delicious.
Seriously, 15 pounds of food in there?
No problem. At about 5 months a year, we can cook 15 pounds of food here in this part of California. In late September and October, you can cook about 8 or 10 pounds of food, as well as in March. We have about an 8-month solar season, starting in March and going until we lose daylight savings time in October. During that time, we have about 200 days a year that you can do serious solar cooking.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and welcome again to Talking It Through, Dialogues on War and Peace, sponsored by the Peace and Justice Network of San Joaquin County and by Stockton Metro Ministry. Our sponsors do not necessarily agree with everything we say here. They help us by buying videotape. I'm John Moriarty, and with me in the studio are 4 of the local leaders in Stockton and San Joaquin County in the work of solar cooking. All members, hard-working members of Solar Box Cookers International. On my immediate right is Dr. Ed Pijak. Ed is a professor of mechanical engineering in the engineering school at UOP. Welcome, Ed. Indeed, welcome back. You were here last year when we did a program on solar cooking.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Next to Ed is Eleanor Schimmel. Describes herself as a backyard cook, a longtime backyard cook, and indeed also author of a just off-the-press book on solar cooking. And we want to hear a recipe or two. These are your canned goods here, Eleanor? Mm-hmm. Welcome back. Next to Eleanor is Professor Saeed Shakran. Saeed is an associate professor of mechanical engineering, also in the UOP Engineering School. Welcome, Saeed.
Thank you.
And finally, Beth Luna, peace activist and solar educator. Welcome, Beth. Beth has been doing workshops for a couple of years now in how to build your own simple solar cooker. Out of what? Cardboard and...
Well, out of cardboard. This is a cooker that's made of cardboard and aluminum foil, and we use Elmer's glue and paste the foil onto the cardboard, and we take 2 boxes, one smaller and one larger, and insert the smaller box in the larger box and fill the space between with whatever we can find, whether it's crushed newspaper or cardboard or you name it. I've heard that feathers make a good insulation. And we use dark-colored pans, preferably. If we have a light-colored pan, we take some aluminum foil and spray it black.
Or what I was told to do is take a piece of black cotton cloth and just lay it over the light-colored pot. Mm-hmm. One of the things that really fascinated me about the conference, and people got to see this in the tape that they just saw of the displays of the cookers on Anderson Lawn, one of the things that really fascinated me was the wide range of different ways in which you can produce a solar cooker. There were these fancy high-tech models with parabolic reflectors. We saw actually 3 of those, including the little Chinese suitcase model that set the newspaper on fire. We saw elaborate fiberglass and mylar devices. We also saw a lot of these simple cardboard boxes. We saw the wonderful rudimentary cardboard box of the homeless man from Mount Shasta. Mm-hmm. I looked inside one of his cookers, and the little oven thermometer there said 350 degrees. Mm-hmm. And it weighs 3 or 4 pounds, and as he said, when it's all done, you just recycle it back into the dumpster from whence it came. So many different ways in which to make a solar cooker that works.
And it costs you less than $4 to build it.
Less than $4 to build that cooker
I
of
have
his.
read that in his book.
Uh-huh.
Because all you need to have is a piece of glass and a little bit of aluminum foil and a little bit of glue.
His book was one of the hits of the conference. I was going to buy his book on Saturday. He had sold them all out.
Heaven's Flame.
Heaven's Flame, right. Our viewers got to see the cookers displayed at the conference, but they didn't get to see any of the presentations in the theater at UOP, and there were 2 days of that. I was actually there only for 1 day. Give people some sense of some of the highlights of the papers that were presented as you felt, what you thought were highlights. Anybody?
One part of the papers, Saturday afternoon, had to do with the technology of solar ovens. And we had some real nice designs and reports of work being done in Germany and France. I was impressed with how many people in other countries are really serious about solar cooking, new designs, making good improvements of all types, heat pipes, thermal storage. And this was more for the engineering and technical part of the audience, but I enjoyed that a lot. Friday morning and Friday afternoon and Saturday morning were sessions on other things such as cooking and nutrition that maybe we can comment on here as well.
I was impressed with the number of people there from all around the world. The number of cookers in India and in China, 100,000 in India, I believe. And they've been cooking for many years.
And something like that number in China, as I remember.
And I hadn't even heard about the China approach to solar cooking. And we had expected very little response in the United States because people have stoves they can turn on here. And instead, there's a lot of interest in solar cooking in the United States, particularly if you're living on a fixed income. And the utilities keep going up. And I cook 7 months out of the year here in the Central Valley. We have these supposedly dry summers. We did have a little rain on Saturday, but very unusual for us to have rain. And the people from around the world that listened to everybody else, it was a synergistic effect of everyone working together on a design and methods, cooking methods, and these technical papers that Ed speaks about. Very impressive, beyond me, but very impressive.
What countries did people come from to this conference? You mentioned Germany and France. Where did people come from?
All over Africa.
All over Africa?
Nigeria, Kenya, Guinea.
Sudan.
Switzerland. Costa Rica.
France. England.
India.
India, I remember.
Pakistan.
A lot from Pakistan. It's amazing the variety of and the one family from France. He spoke. I believe he was German, but spoke French, and his wife only spoke French, and the children stayed with Paul Fairbrook. We had people staying with host families to some extent, and Paul asked for somebody that spoke French and got this wonderful engineer, Michael Group from France.
So this was truly an international conference, and indeed the first international conference on solar cooking, as I understand it.
I believe that's true. To my knowledge, this is the first conference that is international in scope and called people who are solar cookers from around the world to meet in one place, exchange information, get to know each other.
And you folks here in the engineering school and in Solar Box Cookers in the Stockton, Sacramento area put that all together.
We thought it was time in the development of solar cooking to have such an event, and it was absolutely true.
I was impressed. Well, solar cooking is something whose time is truly come. I was impressed talking with Bob Metcalf's report. People saw him. He was the last person on the tape. He was at the conference in Rio, and apparently his booth was mobbed with people from all over the world who wanted information on solar cooking.
The most popular event there in that section, I guess they had 2 miles away, they had government people talking at Rio, and then here on the bazaar, they had the common approach, and this was where Solar Box Cookers International was represented, with 6 people that were there, and mobbed, as you said, with thousands of people asking for information.
Ed, you said it's time. Why is it time for solar cookers?
So much of the world is being devastated by deforestation, people having trouble finding firewood. And if they just knew how to, or thought about using the sun to cook, and realized how easy it was, non-polluting, uses no fuel, this would be a great thing for the preservation of the environment. Trees and bushes wouldn't have to be torn down. In some places they burn dung for food, and that for fuel,
for fertilizer.
Yeah, instead of leaving it in the garden. And so solar cooking has no disadvantages that I can think of, and so many advantages.
It sounds like you're saying it's something for the third world.
Not entirely.
Not entirely. Why here? Why in this rich country? Why solar cooking? Several of you are solar cooks. Why here?
Fun. Lots of fun.
Using simple things to do your daily tasks. Why do you need to spend $100 when you can get the thing for $10?
And also it's important that here in the United States and other more developed countries, it's important that we learn to do solar cooking here, because the undeveloped countries, their question is, do they use it over where you have, is it in use in your country?
The young man from Switzerland told that story in the theater. That was the most significant thing I heard at the conference personally. He said when the person who began their particular institute took solar cookers to somewhere in Africa, people asked that question. They said, they went to Africa, they said, here's this wonderful device for you African folks, and the Africans said, do they use it in your country? I talked with Rod Mercado from the University of Texas, works for the Texas Department of Energy. His job is to go out into the little colonias, the rural barrios where the farm workers live in Texas, and promote solar cooking with the simple, inexpensive cardboard-style cookers. And he said people there ask him, do they use it in the city? Do middle-class people use it? He was taking pictures of my fancy plywood cooker, which is modeled on your plywood cooker, so that he could show them this sort of elegant cabinet maker's model and say, yeah, they use it in the city. Here are these beautiful, elaborate, parabolic mirror cookers. Yes, they use it in the city. This is a device for everybody. I finally got with making a cooker for myself this year, modeled on yours, Eleanor, and inspired by you and a number of other friends who've been feeding me solar-baked cookies and muffins and so on for years. And I discovered it is fun to cook in it.
Well, also, we're saving natural resources in this manner. And I think our country needs to be aware that we are using so many more of the resources of the world per person than any other of these developing countries.
We use far more than our share. We use 20, 50 times as much resources as someone in India or Bangladesh.
My utility bill, for instance, can be $30 a month with my solar water heater, and I don't even use my air conditioner now since 1980 when I began to cook. My bill for last month was $36 for just the electricity that I use.
It really does make a difference for air conditioning. I've discovered that. I don't have to heat up my kitchen in the summertime with the oven or the stovetop. So the kitchen stays cool. I don't need the fan or the air conditioner. Not only am I not using the heat, but I'm not then recooling the kitchen.
Right.
Yeah.
So it does have a significance for us in the U.S. and for all developed countries.
You know, one of the things that was brought out in the conference was that we need, as a global community, as a world group, to change our paradigm, our basic attitude toward how we do our cooking. In other words, we have, for generations, as far back as we can recall, it has been some form of combustion, some form of a development, an offshoot of fire in some way.
Burning something. Wood,
burning something.
Charcoal,
burning something
natural
was
gas.
Something was was developed into a usable item. Nobody paid much very few people paid much attention to the sun as a practical way of of being able to cook. So what we need to do is to change. We have to do this gut change of our way of thinking as a world, to start thinking in terms of that the sun is our original source of heat and a source of light, a source of power, and it's just as simple to tap onto it directly as it is to use devious methods.
We saw people cooking with the sun in a whole variety of ways in the tape. We also saw the solar electric panel powering a pump and ultimately a microwave.
Mm-hmm.
So many ways to use the energy of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Saeed, some highlights of the conference for you.
Well, I would like to summarize my experience for you in 3 stages: before the conference, during the conference, and after the conference. Before the conference, almost since last summer, when Ed started this idea, almost on a daily basis, we had conversations about how to get our materials out to the people, the number of papers that we would accept, how do we invite these people in, all the details of the conference. So this was a very significant project for me to be involved in. During the conference, the highlight for me was meeting these people. And I had the privilege of having Rodriguez with us. Rod, the fellow that you mentioned that works in Texas, he was our house guest, and I learned a lot from this man. Also, I met a fellow American who has lived in Pakistan and Afghanistan for many years. And when we introduced each other, he spoke to me in Farsi, and Farsi is my native language. That was another highlight. And then after the conference, we are speaking about continuing this tradition and having another conference in the future, maybe in another country. From technical perspective, because I have technical background, there are challenges that were brought up to my attention that I can work as a research project on them. So when you put everything together, this was a significant professional growth aspect of my work at UOB, and I'm grateful for that.
People coming together from all over the world, and the work now, as you say, paths opening up.
Networking.
Networking.
Yeah,
People now know each other. Hundreds of people know each other all around the world as interested in solar cooking, and this is important.
It's like there were these separate dandelions sprouting here and there and everywhere, and now you've gotten to know each other. You know that it's going on here, there, and everywhere.
John, we were talking a minute ago about different benefits of solar cooking, and I wanted to bring up nutrition.
Please.
We had a very interesting report from Dr. Devadas from India, and she reported on nutrition. Certain nutrients, vitamins and so on, are preserved better in solar cooking than with high temperature cooking on a stove. I think this is an area that needs to be looked at a lot more, because you know, the nutrition is one of the main reasons we're eating the food in the first place. And solar cooking may be very beneficial to nutrients.
The one time I cooked carrots in the cooker, I discovered I could just clean them and put them in. I didn't have to put them in water. No nutrients got lost in the water. I just baked the carrots.
Right.
So this is true for many foods, you're saying?
Yes. I think more work has to be done in that area. This might be, aside from the things mentioned here, that might be another benefit of solar cooking. We need to get other fields like nutritionalists and cultural people and social study people involved in this whole thing.
She also spoke about the ability to put rice and grains into the solar cooker and for a short period of time, and this will kill any bugs or eggs, and preserve the grain, and I have done that with nuts.
Oh, you mean put them in dry?
Yeah,
before
put
cooking.
them in, yeah, and then they're preserved. And in the fall, when almonds and walnuts are plentiful here in the valley, I put them out on a cookie sheet and put them in at 250 for 10 minutes. The flavor is not altered, and they do not have to be frozen. I can just put them in a jar or a tin.
You put them in cracked, not in the shell, but
oh yeah, ready to use, and just they're not roasted. You can toast. I have almonds toasting in my cooker right now at home because I'm going to go home and make chicken salad, and I want to put almonds on top of it that are toasting today. I canned apricots today that were given to me. On Friday, a branch of my neighbor's plum tree broke, and we went over and picked the plums off of that branch and canned these on Friday, or was that Monday? We did that in our class, I guess.
Tell us, Eleanor, how you have done this canning here, these beautiful jars of...
Well, this is fruit. You can only can fruit and tomatoes. I must make this very clear. You cannot can meat, you cannot can vegetables because of botulism. And tomatoes, you cannot even put a sprig of parsley in, or a pepper or onion or anything like that because of botulism. That has to be canned then under pressure with that higher heat and the pressure.
But fruit you can can.
Fruit you can can, and to can... these two jars, one of these was canned in 1988 and one today.
Today, this very today?
This today.
What are these?
These are apricots. And I asked one of you which one was which, and that one is the new one. But you can see in 5 years how little change there has been. And there are two different kinds of apricots also, but that benign heat does not destroy color or flavor or nutrition, and it's a real bonus.
How do you do it exactly?
Well, you put as many apricots in. I put them in upside down halves, or peaches. These are done the same way, and as the jar will hold, and then add the amount of sugar that you prefer. And then pour water over until the water comes up to the neck of the jar, about up to here, about where this lid screws on. I wipe the top of the jar off, put on the lid. I don't even have to sterilize jars first or lids. I just take them off the shelf, which have been put away clean, because you have terminal sterilization as these are canned. You put the lids on, put on the tops as tight as you can make it.
Really? Tight?
And tight. And not unnecessarily tight. I don't have a very strong hands, and so mine are not as tight as perhaps you could do. These were new lids. You can use old lids because the rubber on the lids is not destroyed.
You can get away with reusing the lids.
Reusing lids. I found this out on the year that we had a shortage of the lids, and so I could reuse them. You could also use any kind of a jar, like peanut butter or wheat germ or whatever kind of a jar that has a rubber inside of it. And I canned apricots today in another jar, and intended to bring that in, and had my hands full, and only brought this when I came in and forgot to go back and get that. The other jar seals also.
So what's the process then? You just put them in the cooker?
Put them in the cooker, and I usually put them on a tray, plate, so that when they boil, they'll bubble over. And when they bubble over, you take them out quickly so they don't lose a lot of juice. You do not do anything more to the lid. It's already on, and it stays on, and as it cools, it makes a vacuum that sucks that lid down and makes it sealed. And when it has this that one doesn't sound like it's sealed anymore. Now these are all sealed.
Excuse me, Eleanor. How many of these did you do today, and how long did it take?
I put in 2 to start with, 2 quarts to start with. They were in at 11, and I took those out about 1. Had a lot more apricots left, and so I thought, well, I'll make a little jar like this and see if they can tell the difference. And I did. Put that in with the other jar that's, I can't remember what I took out of that jar. Maybe like the spaghetti sauce from our class the other day had a lid like that. And that went in, those went in at 2 o'clock and were out at 3. So they take about an hour for the small jars at that late in the afternoon. And the others took about 2 hours because I did not have my cooker focused as much at first. I also cooked, baked 2 eggs today without water. I just put the eggs in on the rack, and we had 2 hard-boiled eggs. I've done something else. Oh, toasted the almonds. And you can put iced tea in there and make it faster than you can just sitting it out on the patio, for instance. But I was not in any hurry, so I just made iced tea in a jar that I've sprayed black. Your young man from Shasta takes a jar. He likes the wide mouth jars, and he puts a strip of tape on here and then sprays the jar black and then pulls the tape off,
so you can see into the jar.
And then he can watch and see the peas cooking or the rice cooking and see if it's boiling, and it's really fun to see his things, how they're bubbling away in there, and you can see that what's in there. But you don't have to, he cooks in jars all the time, and I cook in this kind of a pan like Beth has. That's
a black enameled
it's
metal pan.
It's inexpensive. I also today have a cobbler in for dinner tonight. It's apricot and plum cobbler, and it's in my Corningware. And I have just dropped a shortcake type dough on top. So that's I just keep that thing working all the time.
So the Corningware is white.
And I put a black foil, or I also can use this lid that she has here. You can just put that over your. I do put the lid on the shortcake that I'm cooking, the cobbler, and then I've covered mine with foil. Sometimes I just take a black lid and lay it over. And when I put my jars in, tomatoes can more quickly because they're dark. They heat quickly, more quickly than the lighter colored. And also with tomatoes, you don't put any water on. You just keep pushing down tomatoes, and they make their own juice. And I put salt in, and so tomatoes are a little different than the fruit. They have no water.
This canning process is so simple, it's boggling my mind.
That's what the ladies thought that heard the talk on Saturday, and I was just overwhelmed with these requests for canning, which are in my cookbook.
Your cookbook, right. Tell us about the cookbook.
Well, I did a cookbook in 1983 and printed 500, and in 1988 I had to do another 500, and now I'm out of those, and we were in a hurry for people to get this at the conference. So this one's called Eleanor's New Solar Cookbook, and it's a little bit different. I've taken out some recipes and added some others, have a lot more instructions, but then each section is divided, and here's the section on canning with different cheese and eggs, desserts, cereals and bread, baked bread for our class. We had lasagna for our class. We had chicken and rice, and we
spinach quiche.
Spinach quiche, and we had a delicious vegetable dish that one of the students brought in with chunks of zucchini, tomato, peppers and onions and ginger and a little oil,
a little garlic.
Garlic, and that was brought. His wife fixed that, and he brought that to class. And then we did baked bread. Bread is also in here, and so there's just all kinds. You can, from soup to nuts, lots of variety in the solar cookbook.
And your box is almost the same size as this one, right?
It's a little
much
bit
larger.
Square. I think it's the same width.
It's made of wood.
And it has the wood shell, which makes it a little bit more sturdy.
Okay.
We have just 5 minutes left. I should tell people, get your pencils and paper ready. We're going to give some addresses and phone numbers if you want to know how to get in touch with these people and find out more about solar cooking. We'll do that in a minute. So the variety of things that one can cook in a simple solar cooker is really vast.
Endless. Whatever you cook it, except maybe pasta is a little harder to cook. It gets done too quickly. Green vegetables get done very quickly. You have to watch them. If you put in peas, just let them get hot because they'll keep their nice green color. Asparagus is wonderful, very bright green.
You cook it in water, or you cook it in its own?
No. Just put them in and let them cook. A friend of mine cooked a whole one of the small little roasters that's oval, about this long. Perhaps you have one there, Beth, and she filled that with asparagus for a Easter Sunday family gathering. And the people said, did you put green food coloring on this? It's such a beautiful bright green, and it was so tender, and it was tender crisp, and it just was wonderful. Wonderful asparagus.
Just straight asparagus with the lid on, or?
With the lid on. We cook mostly with lids on, even baking bread with the lid on, but it gets brown. And you can bake cookies. Chocolate cookies bake faster than vanilla cookies.
Because they're darker.
Because they're dark. And that you really become very much aware when you're a solar cook of where we are in the solar world, because is the sun straight overhead like it is now, or is it way low on the horizon like it is in January? And you can cook in January. I cooked rice in January, but mostly it's April, May, June, July, August, September, and then the beginning in February a little, and March. And a little in October.
I've been getting a lot of mail because of this conference, and I got some colored pictures in mail from Saskatchewan, Canada. December of this past year, they had a foot of snow on the ground. It was 3 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and they showed me the pictures of the oven they had cooked in that day, and tilted a very sharp angle to the ground, of course, and perfect results.
What did they cook, did they say?
They probably did, but I don't recall right now.
Seattle also is a big solar group up there that cook all year, supposedly.
Yeah, they say if you can cook in Seattle, then that means you can cook in large part of the world.
I think our biggest problem is the fog that we have in the winter.
So you have to have direct sunlight.
Some direct sun.
15 minutes out of each hour will keep foods cooking, like rice or beans or soups, that kind of thing.
Really?
Vegetables, if you get 15 minutes of direct sun. And
so I can make soup in the wintertime if there's some sunshine.
If you have some sunshine. And there's always, in our country, we have this wonderful backup system, which is a blessing. We can go into our kitchens and
put it on the stove, turn on the juice.
If you have to. If you have to. And in other countries where they're dependent on having that, whatever they're cooking that day, maybe all they have, then you've got to have a good reliable cooker, and this is a reliable cooker.
John, I would like to make a clarification, and that is a very significant component of a solar box cooker is a glass plate that you have to have on the top.
Right.
And the reason that you would like to cover your pots with something is because if you don't do that, then you get condensation on the underneath of this glass plate, and you don't get much solar radiation hitting your pot.
So you want to keep the moisture in the pot.
That's right.
The solar cooker is a heat trap, just like a car.
Just like my car when I get into it. Yes, I'm familiar with that effect.
And that glass is terribly important.
We have a minute and a half.
We had a very successful class. 8 people that stayed on or joined us at university through the University of Pacific Lifelong Learning. Beth has been instrumental in getting that going.
Well, I helped them with the making of the solar box cookers. We used kits to make the box within a box, and then we had our lids pre-made by SBCI, Solar Box Cookers International.
And you do that through UOP Lifelong Learning.
This is through Lifelong Learning.
We need to, in this last minute, we need to tell our viewers how they can get in touch with you in various ways. So one way is to get in touch with Beth Luna through UOP Lifelong Learning. You do the workshops in how to build your own solar cooker. How else can people reach you?
I am in Mechanical Engineering Department, University of the Pacific. My phone number is 946-3080.
946-3080.
Ed's phone number is 946-3082.
And let's mention
and that's in the
SolarBox
phone book,
cookers.
UOP, Department of Mechanical Engineering, and then SolarBox Cookers International.
We have an office in Sacramento, 916-444-6616. 916-444-6616.
And finally, Eleanor Schimmel for this cookbook.
For the cookbook, 7028 Leesburg Place, Stockton, 95207, or my phone number is 209-478-6318.
Give that number again, please.
478-6318. And the cookbook sells for $10 plus California tax.
Well, we can't really sell things on this program,
Oh,
but
I'm
they
sorry.
know that they can get a hold of you there and find out what the story is.
No commercials.
Really? Well, we have to stop. I wish we could go on. We may do another program on this, but we've got to stop now. Thank you very much for being here. Ed Pijak, Eleanor Schimmel, Saeed Shakaran, and Beth Luna. I'm John Moriarty. Thank you and good evening.
20 knots, seas 4 feet.